Shocking truth, daughter skips father's funeral, yet demands $200,000 for husband's birthday celebration. Maggie Thompson stood in the stark, sterile confines of the hospital room, her mind reeling as the whispers of her colleagues slipped through the crack in her facade. "Can you believe she's not going?" they muttered, opinions buzzing louder than the fluorescent lights above. Today, she should have been mourning the death of her father, yet here she was, facing the judgment of a community that defined loyalty through blood. The tension coiled around her heart like a vice, squeezing tighter as guilt and relief intertwined within her. In the small Midwestern town she called home, loyalty wasn't a choice, it was an expectation. The heavy weight of her father's absence brought a strange, sobering clarity to her thoughts. She grappled with the absence of grief, feeling almost liberated by the silence left in the wake of his cold demeanor after the divorce. Just a few days ago, she'd put away the memories of their fractured relationship, an emotional battlefield littered with scars she wasn't sure she'd ever learn to heal. Yet, the self-doubt crept in. Would he have wanted her to cast aside ambition for the sake of family obligation? She didn't even know who he was anymore. Should I skip the funeral? Her husband, Mike, had the audacity to slather glitter on her practical dreams of a modest birthday celebration, a $200,000 shindig he insisted would cement their status in town. The very thought of slashing into their savings left her stomach churning, yet the idea of taking her father's money now felt like a turning point, an escape hatch from the chaos. The guilt tightened its grip like the scrubs she wore. It was a dilemma that went beyond the monetary. Was she ready to forgive a man she had barely known? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The neighbors, with their prying eyes and well-intentioned whispers, didn't understand the strain of pursuing surgery, the grind, the sleepless nights, the relentless ambition pounding in her ears. They didn't see the years Maggie spent feeling suffocated by family traditions she had long since run from. They didn't know the threats incurred as she carved her path through a male-dominated field. And now she was to bear the weight of an inheritance she never asked for. If she took that money, would it tie her to a legacy she didn't choose? In the corner of her mind, she felt the familiar flicker of anger rise in tandem with despair. The looming funeral felt insurmountable, each moment dragging her further into depths she thought she'd escaped. She felt raw, stretched thin between her past and aspirations that felt more tangible than family ties. Just as she started to breathe, the walls began to close in. A letter arrived that morning, bearing her father's handwriting, filled with cryptic promises and haunting memories. In that moment, as she grasped the envelope, machinery whirred in her mind, suffocating her with unanswered questions. What if this was the very key to unraveling the relationship she despised? What if he had known her more than she ever realized? The internal storm raged within her, and the weight of choice pushed down harder than before. Would she risk everything and challenge the very definition of family? Or would she cling to the bitterness that had been her shield? With her heart pounding in discord with her head, Maggie stared at the letter, a portal to a life she resisted, her resolve weakening against the impending torrent of emotional reckoning that lay ahead. Maggie's fingers trembled as she turned the letter over, feeling the rough texture of the envelope against her skin. What secrets lay hidden within? A cold knot nestled in her stomach as she envisioned her father's scrawled words, an invitation, a challenge, or perhaps undecipherable threats that had been emboldened by years of silence. The sterile brightness of the hospital room faded into a blur, her gaze fixated on the chaotic thoughts swirling within her. Each passing second felt like an eternity as she weighed the implications of opening that envelope. What did it mean for her identity, her dreams? Taking a deep breath, she willed her hand to act, tearing the envelope with a purposeful rip that echoed through her tumultuous mind. Unfolding the letter, Maggie's eyes darted across the page. Her father's handwriting was immediate and jagged, filled with implications and vague memories. It spoke of things left unsaid, of love disguised as duty, of expectations woven into the fabric of their fractured family. Each line resonated with a bitter mix of nostalgia and resentment, and Maggie's chest constricted. Did he hope to explain himself, to justify decades of harshness with a few written words? The vulnerability in that moment cracked her emotional facade like fragile glass that as she read, she felt the echoes of her childhood rise, moments buried long ago beneath layers of disappointment, each penned phrase pulling her deeper into a whirlwind of reflection. Was the man she had known a silhouette of bitterness and regret really all there was to him? Had she ever given herself the chance to see beyond her anger? The letter unveiled intentions cloaked in obscurity, stirring memories of laughter and pain. She realized those feelings were sewn tightly, like threads in a tapestry. The past was not merely something to escape, it was a realm that warranted validation. You can't run from your history, she muttered to herself, the words surprising even her. Just then, Mike's voice cut through her turmoil. He entered the room with a sleek folder in hand, eyes bright, oblivious to the storm the letter had conjured. I've been reviewing the plans for the party. With the right contacts, we can make it more than just a standard birthday gala. He beamed, his face animated with excitement and ambition. For a fleeting moment, Maggie considered casting aside her father's letter. To retreat into the comfort of compliance to Mike's dreams felt easy, like slipping on a well-worn coat. But the memory of her father's words encircled her like a tightrope, begging her to traverse. I need time, she said, her voice more confident than she felt. The resolve that had long been buried sparked anew within her chest. Time for what, exactly? The question dripped with confusion and impatience. To figure out who I am beyond expectations, Maggie responded, and for once she could hear the trembling determination in her own voice. Mike's brows furrowed as he caught on to the shift in her demeanor. You're not thinking about skipping the funeral, are you? We could do the party first. Your father will understand. He always did. Her heart sank at the implication but held steadfast to her new clarity. This moment offered a fork in her journey. Honor the past and forge a path towards whatever lay beyond this quiet torment. Embrace the reckoning and the uncomfortable truth, even when others would choose silence. As she stood up, the letter clutched in one hand, a weight had been lifted but also replaced with the burden of decisions looming over her. Ignoring the searching eyes of her husband, she turned to face the corridor's sterile lighting. The uncertainty behind her eclipsed by a subtle rush of opportunity ahead. Suddenly, a realization washed over her. She wasn't merely defined by familial love or lack thereof. If she didn't carve her path now, while confronting the ghosts of her upbringing, she risked perpetuating the chain of unmet expectations. The questions loomed larger than her husband's birthday party fantasy. Could she redefine her legacy? Each step down that corridor echoed the weight of her next decision. As Maggie moved towards her future, she knew this was merely the beginning. The choice would need to be made: the funeral, the money, her father, all abruptly entwined in her quest for self-discovery. And just when she thought she could find clarity, a sudden notification pinged from her phone, shattering the newfound resolve, presenting news she hadn't anticipated: a message from a family lawyer regarding her father's estate. An unsettling knot pulled tight in her chest again as she realized the real test was just beginning. Maggie's fingers shook as she stared at her phone. The screen lit up with a message that felt like a strike at her foundation. A family lawyer she barely recognized was requesting a meeting, wanting to discuss her father's estate. It felt surreal that, after years of silence, here was this sudden call to action, an invitation to wade deeper into murky waters she was just beginning to confront. She had always thought of her father's wealth as a distant, abstract entity, tainted by their relationship. The thought of engaging with it now while standing at this crossroads brought a wave of nausea. Would this inquiry unravel the layers she had started to peel back, or would it force her to slip back into the patterns of the past? Maggie? Mike's voice pulled her from her thoughts, sharp with concern. He stepped closer, the excitement from before draining from his expression. What is it? It's about my father, she managed, her voice almost a whisper. The sudden weight of her worries already felt like it was too much for her to carry alone. His brows knitted together, impatience rolling off him. This isn't about the party, is it? We need to focus on what's ahead. The frustration seeped into her resolve, and Maggie clenched the phone tighter. No, Mike. It's not about the party, this is about me figuring out my past. The heat of her words surprised her even more than the conviction behind them. I can't pretend it's not there anymore. He opened his mouth to argue, perhaps trying to hold on to the vision of a grand celebration, but the determination in Maggie's eyes silenced him. She was no longer merely an accessory in his plans. Fine, he said, backing off. Just let me know how long you'll be tied up with this. His lack of empathy felt like a slap, igniting a defiance within her. She needed to push forward, to discover what was buried beneath the weight of familial expectations. Finding courage in her resolve, Maggie headed down the corridor, each step resonating with purpose. She could feel shadows of her father lurking behind her, but this time she was not just running away. She was running towards something, an understanding, an explanation, perhaps even a sense of closure. As she settled into the sterile waiting area of the lawyer's office, she gripped the edge of her chair, full of swirling doubts. How much did she really want to know? Would this meeting serve as a catalyst for personal transformation or merely drudge up more buried grievances? The clock ticked steadily, reminding her that time was slipping away. Moments later, the lawyer appeared. He was an older man with tired eyes and a nonchalant manner that prompted disbelief. Maggie Thompson? Here, she said, trying to project confidence while inside, her heart raced. Good to meet you. Your father left behind an estate that's a bit more complicated than simple numbers. Would you like to know the implications of what he wanted for you? The question hung in the air, dense and foreboding. The space around her felt charged like the threshold of a too-high cliff she needed to leap across. Every instinct screamed caution. Trust? She had not seen honesty in her father's words for too long. Would this conversation merely unravel more questions that had long been hidden? I do, she finally replied, signaling a crossroad moment, both thrilling and terrifying. As the lawyer began to explain, Maggie couldn't shake the notion that understanding her father's last wishes might forge a link between their estrangement and her own identity, a pivotal moment beckoning for her to decide who she truly was. But just when the lawyer outlined a figure that was staggering $200,000, the ground beneath her seemed to quake. What did it mean for her own sense of worth and the unresolved issues with her father? This was not just about money, this was a challenge to build or break her legacy. The lawyer's words faded into a haze, the implications forming into an urgent question: was she prepared to confront the darkness of their past for the chance of renewal? And within that tension, Maggie found a flicker of clarity that illuminated a deeper truth. She had to face the hard reality. What might it cost her to truly embrace her inheritance, spiritually and emotionally? As uncertainty circled her like a tempest, Maggie knew the real battle was just beginning. Would she continue to confront the ghosts of her past armed with newfound resolve and courage, or choose to step back into a life defined by her husband's expectations, forsaking her father's shadows forever? Maggie's mind spun as the lawyer's words echoed in her ears. $200,000 felt more like a noose than a safety net. She had anticipated complications, but not this magnitude, this heavy realization of her father's final wishes. Would this inheritance bring liberation or entrapment? As she glanced around the austere office, indistinct voices floated in from the hallway, laughter punctuating her isolation like a cruel reminder of what she had chosen to confront. Miss Thompson? The lawyer's voice broke through her reverie, pulling her back to the present. Are you okay? This might be overwhelming, I understand. I'm fine, she replied sharply, her own irritation surprising her. The longer she sat in that chair, the more it seemed a metaphor for her life, sitting in discomfort, clinging to illusions for fear of what moving forward might entail. Your father's estate includes some unusual conditions regarding the inheritance, he continued, folding his hands. He specified that to receive any funds, you must complete a series of exercises aimed at understanding your family legacy. Exercises? The word lodged itself in her throat, tinged with the sarcasm she didn't intend to show. What kind of exercises? Emotional and personal reflections, he explained, again emitting an air of practiced nonchalance. Your father wanted you to reconcile your past with your inheritance. It's akin to a challenge he set for you. Suddenly, the weight of it all pressed down on Maggie, her heart raced with conflicting emotions. Was this merely another attempt to manipulate from beyond the grave? Or was it a genuine effort on her father's part to engage her in a meaningful way? She was accustomed to deciphering motives, collecting evidence, something she inherited from him, yet now she felt inadequate in the face of this sudden upheaval. "Can I consider this challenge?" she stammered, attempting to mentally balance the immense prospect before her. "Absolutely," the lawyer replied. "I suggest taking some time to think it over. But be warned, there is a time limit. To claim the inheritance, you must complete these tasks within 6 months." 6 months felt both like an eternity and a fleeting moment. She could not shake the rising tide of frustration at this added complexity that bound her to her father's past. Maggie's determination burned within her. Could this challenge become a path to eventual freedom? Through the murk of emotions, a flicker of her true self ignited. She had to reclaim her narrative, take action, even if the first steps were riddled with doubt. Her father's expectation, though suffocating, could also serve as a catalyst. "Are you ready to explore your family history?" the lawyer asked, his reserved demeanor shifting, revealing an undercurrent of empathy. "Ready? No. Curious?" "Yes," she said, searching for the right words. "But what does embracing my past look like? And how do I ensure it doesn't just turn me into another person defined by what someone else wanted?" The lawyer simply nodded, giving her the space to grapple with her thoughts. Maggie left the office, her phone buzzing against her thigh, reminders from Mike flooding her mental landscape with conflicting priorities. She was navigating the precipice of personal evolution, but with every step back to her car, she felt more convinced that confronting the past, the ghosts of her father and the silent judgments of her husband, would ignite a journey of reclamation rather than the death knell she feared. As she started the engine, the world outside shifted from monochrome to vivid hues, the pending confrontation hovering like a specter in the periphery of her awareness. What awaited her in the depths of her father's legacy? The heart-wrenching truths and revelations. Would the exercises serve to rearrange her identity or finally allow her to break free from the shadows that stretched behind her? Maggie took a deep breath, acclimating to the heaviness of her decisions, the air thick with anticipation and tension. She had made a choice. She would unravel the complexities of her existence, confront the truth, and rediscover the meaning of family, both chosen and unchosen. The time for reckoning was upon her, and the shadows danced in eager anticipation. But before she could even begin to strategize her first move, a notification popped up on her screen, a message from Mike that sent icy tendrils of dread through her. "We need to talk. Now." Her heart dropped as she weighed the one looming confrontation against another. Would she face her husband first, or plunge into the depths of her father's world? The path ahead twisted into darkness just as she dared to feel the warmth of her developing strength. Maggie gripped the steering wheel tighter, a rush of anxiety overwhelming her as she read Mike's message again. The air felt heavy inside the car, her sanctuary suddenly transforming into a claustrophobic space filled with burdens she didn't know how to carry. Faced with the urgency of Mike's demand, she started the engine, but her mind raced to the office, to her father's words, to the timeline ticking away. The juxtaposition was stark, her father's legacy waiting patiently for her inspection while her personal life crumbled under pressure. She pulled away from the curb and merged into traffic, her thoughts whirling as she battled between her obligation to her husband and the tantalizing pull of her father's challenge. Which confrontation would lead to insight, and which would merely replay the same tired arguments? As she navigated the streets, the urge to dive headfirst into the project her father had devised grew stronger. The notion that engaging with her father's legacy could lead to freedom appealed to her, a tantalizing possibility hiding among the feelings of irritation and betrayal. What could she uncover? A kaleidoscopic reflection of her upbringing played in her mind as she turned onto their street. She had been taught that family history was a weighty inheritance, but never once had she viewed it as an opportunity for personal growth. What journey would await if she took on the emotional reflections? Could they disentangle the expectations that had repeatedly ensnared her? The house loomed ahead, its familiar contours now distant and foreboding. Mike was an integral part of her life. Yet lately, maybe for years, she felt the disconnect like a growing chasm. As she parked, determination surged through her veins. This conversation was a necessity, a step toward real estate, one that might unravel tangles she had long ignored. Entering the house, the The scent of coffee and faint traces of burnt toast wafted into her consciousness, mixed with an undercurrent of tension. Mike sat at the kitchen table, a powerful figure in a patterned shirt, his expression slicing through the air with a tangible discontent. Their conversations often spiraled, tangled like the roots of some ancient tree. This one felt destined to be no different. "Maggie," his voice was sharp, laced with concern that morphed into frustration. "We really need to talk about your father and I know," she interjected, her voice trembling slightly with urgency and resolve. "I just came from the lawyer. He laid everything out for me." She could feel the weight of the revelation like a stone in her stomach. "I'm not sure how to process it all yet." "Skip it." Mike snapped, and the words hit her like a slap. "You're letting him pull you back in. You went months without seeing him, and now you're entertaining the idea of fulfilling his ridiculous conditions? You have to choose between his past and ours." Maggie's heart raced. He was directing the conversation deftly, invoking their joint life as if it were a shield against uncomfortable truths. This moment had the potential to tip into chaos, tense with competing loyalties. "What if the challenge leads me to finally understand more about who I am?" she countered, aware of the conflicting tides of loyalty crashing within her. "I can't keep running away from this." "Running away?" Mike spat, eyes blazing. "You're talking about diving back into the very thing that caused you pain, into a legacy that you spent years trying to escape." The term legacy flashed through her mind like a beacon, each syllable echoing against the walls of her consciousness. She realized that his philosophy was rooted in fear that she'd allow her past to overpower everything she had built with him. Yet, was he entirely wrong? Was engaging with her father's wishes a journey of significance or a guaranteed path to loss? "I can't ignore my father's expectations any longer," Maggie asserted, setting her jaw. "This could be my chance to reclaim my story. My choices are mine, not dictated by his shadow or your perception of what my past means." The tension crackled. Like electricity in the air, social contracts unraveling with every exchange. This wasn't simply about confrontation, it was the crux of her identity and her relationship with Mike laid bare. What would happen if she ventured into her father's world while maintaining her conviction for self-discovery? "Then maybe I can't be part of this anymore," he warned, voice hardening. "You're going to have to choose." In the pulse of that moment, the barriers fell away, and the room buzzed with a fearsome energy. Maggie understood that the future was now a dangling thread, a decision waiting to weave through the tapestry of existence. As she stood there, the implications of Mike's ultimatum solidified, a challenge far more complex than anything her father had devised. Her heart raced, decisiveness sparking like flint against steel. What was it going to take for her to stand her ground, to piece together the multifaceted essence of her existence? Would she hold fast to her father's challenge or capitulate to the man she loved? Before she could answer her own questions, her phone buzzed again, terminals of uncertainty suddenly reawakening. Tension tightened around her chest. Whatever came next could shift the course of her life irrevocably. A message awaited, a flicker of the unknown that threatened to ignite the very confrontation she was most unprepared for. Maggie took a deep breath, realizing that the path to self-definition was riddled with shadows, and each step further into the darkness threatened to pull her deeper. What awaited her beneath the surface? The gravity of choice and emotional reckoning loomed large, and she was on the verge of that transformative leap. Maggie felt the cold sweat trickle down her spine as she forced herself to look at the notification on her phone. The message she'd been dreading more than her confrontation with Mike had arrived. It wasn't just a simple ping, it was an aggressive summons for a family meeting scheduled with her father's attorney, and the words were sharp: "We need to discuss your father's final request." She instinctively glanced at Mike, who remained seated, arms crossed, face still ablaze with unresolved anger. His discomfort radiated through the room, amplifying the pressure already weighing on her chest. With a trembling hand, she opened the message. "An opportunity to reclaim what was lost," she whispered, but even to her, the words felt overly optimistic, thrown into a void of confusion. Mike's heavy sigh interrupted her spiral of thought. "You see? Just look at what he's doing to you. Every time you try to breathe, he pulls you back in. This isn't a story about self-discovery, it's a trap. Yet the notion of her father's legacy loomed large in her mind, filling the void where her own desires should be. A disjointed sense of purpose hummed beneath her reluctance. Maybe by confronting the tangled roots of her family, she could finally disentangle herself from the expectations of both her father and Mike. But was it truly a matter of confronting her family's legacy, or was she simply seeking validation from the man who had looked down on her all these years? What's the meeting about? Mike pressed, his tone shifting from anger to concern. It's just about everything. Her voice cracked, thick with emotions she struggled to define. I can't ignore it. I don't know what I'm walking into, but I feel like I need to find out. An unsettling quiet fell over them. The surprising weight of what lay ahead contrasted against the momentary stillness in their kitchen. This choice felt monumental, a fork in the road that might seal both their fates. Maggie swallowed hard, her resolve shuddering under the gravity of a decision that could alter the very fabric of their lives. I don't want to hurt you, she said, searching for a way to address the widening chasm between them. But if I don't go, if I don't confront it, I'll be left with regret. Regret? Mike laughed bitterly, but the warmth in his eyes dimmed. What you'll really be left with is a chance to validate his choices over yours. This life we've built, this love, he faltered, eyes glued to hers, vulnerable yet laced with bitterness. Do you really want to gamble that for a legacy you're still trying to escape? Maggie stepped back, the words ricocheting in her mind. Did she want to embrace her father's burden, or was it an opportunity for liberation? I can't keep hiding, she insisted, the tension buoying her courage into a thick envelope of determination. I have to face the truth, whatever it may be. A silence loomed heavy, coiling around them with unspooled questions. She perceived a flicker of uncertainty cross Mike's face, hardly enough to pacify her doubts. She recognized the duality in his gaze. He wanted both her to reclaim her narrative and to shed the paternal ties that bound them both unnaturally. But as she steeled herself for this leap into the unknown, another message buzzed. Please arrive with a clear mind, Maggie. This will affect everyone. The finality in the words ignited a surge of anxiety mixed with a strange thrill. A personal challenge awaited her that transcended her simple status as a daughter. This was about redefining her existence, claiming autonomy over her story, even if it meant facing the specter of her father's choices and expectations. Yet the warning signs were all around her. What if love meant sacrificing her desire for her father's acceptance? And if she chose her path of discovery, would Mike remain alongside her, or fade into the relentless tide of history? Maggie felt a new thrill coursing through her, an awakening that sprung from doubt and fear but slowly crystallized reassurance. The threads of her past were fraying, and she could either weave them into something new or let them slip through her fingers entirely. I have to go, she declared softly, her voice firm now, as if she were forging a fragile but resolute plan. But I need you to stand by me. Mike's expression wrestled with turmoil, but ultimately, he nodded, albeit reluctantly. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was both forging her path and pulling him along an unsteady alignment of passion and duty. As she prepared to engage in what could climax the tensions of her familial legacy, the ground beneath her wavered. The very act of stepping forward had presented an unexpected barrier. Would she bend the mold created by her father's shadow, or would she command her own narrative? In that swirling chaos of choice and consequence, Maggie stood poised, fully aware that the next confrontation could lead to either a profound awakening or an irrevocable fracture of everything she held dear. A choice loomed, heavy and daunting. Would she reclaim her narrative in the meeting to come or risk it all in pursuit of emotional clarity? The moment stretched before her, pulsing with potential, ready to reshape the tangles of her existence into something entirely new. With determination sharpening her focus, she clutched her phone, feeling its quiet weight. What clarity lay buried beneath the layers of expectation? She braced herself, answers awaited, but the question now felt mercilessly simple. Would she accept the truth of her family or risk everything for an identity yet to be discovered? As the day of the meeting approached, Maggie's anxiety transformed into a restless energy, gnawing at her resolve while fueling her determination. Each moment felt like an unraveling thread, fraying her attachment to the life she had built with Mike. She found herself oscillating between a longing for her father's approval and a burgeoning desire for autonomy. The sun dripped low as she prepared mentally, standing in front of the mirror, surveying the reflection of a woman on the brink of confrontation. Would today reveal buried truths or simply layer on more confusion? Maggie traced the outline of her features, searching for strength in the shadows. This was more than an obligation, it was a pivotal turning point, a chance to break free from the chains of a legacy that threatened to suffocate her. Face the truth, she whispered to herself, but beyond the encouragement loomed the deafening question, what truth? Moments before leaving, adrenaline coursed through her veins like wildfire, igniting a new spark of courage. Gathering her documents she had tucked away since her father's passing, Maggie hesitated. A part of her still wanted to pump the brakes, to retreat into the reassuring familiarity of denial alongside Mike. But retreating was no longer an option, and she needed to embrace this challenge head-on. Stepping outside, the crisp air met her lungs, invigorating her spirit, yet a gnawing doubt tugged at her mind. Would Mike's presence next to her offer support or a reminder of the path she was forsaking? The thought of walking into the attorney's office stirred a cocktail of dread and resolve. She was acutely aware that the outcome of this day could shift not only her relationship with her father's legacy but also reshape the bond she had strived to solidify with Mike. Just breathe, she reiterated, repeating a mantra that had helped her through many stressful moments. Sitting in the passenger seat, she tried to focus on the road ahead, but her mind raced. Each intersection felt significant, a metaphor for the choices she was grappling with. Turning left meant diving deep into family expectations, while turning right signified embracing her own aspirations. Are you okay? Mike's voice broke through her thoughts as he glanced over, concern etched on his face. I will be, she replied, summoning her strongest resolve. The attorney's office loomed large in front of them, an edifice that seemed to symbolize the weight of her family history. Dread pooled in her stomach as they climbed the steps. Did she truly have the reservoir of strength needed to confront what lay beyond those doors? Inside, a sterile atmosphere enveloped her, underscoring the chill of the emotional labyrinth she was about to navigate. The room was austere, filled with dark wood paneling and polished furniture that reinforced the formality of the occasion. Across the table, Mr. C.C., her father's attorney, prepared a stack of documents, a silent witness to the legacy that was cloaked in both obligation and expectation. Thank you for coming, Maggie, he greeted, his tone professional yet devoid of warmth. Like the office he inhabited, she sat, adjusting her posture to assert her presence. I want to know what my father wanted from me, she stated, her voice steady, laced with an undercurrent of urgency. Your father had specific wishes regarding his estate, the attorney began, and as the conversation unfolded, Maggie felt herself teetering between dread and expectancy. The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. Details emerged that pulled the strings of her curiosity, unraveling a tapestry of unspoken connections and hidden expectations, but as Mr. C.C. spoke, something else caught her attention. The way he referred to her father's wishes, almost reverently, kindled within her an unsettling mix of defiance and disappointment. What if those wishes were a smokescreen for control? It became apparent that the expectations placed upon her were a reflection of her father's unyielding grip on her identity, that a flicker of rebellion ignited in her chest. Maggie realized this conversation was more than a retelling of her father's demands, it was a battlefield for her identity. Would she conform to the narrative dictated by a legacy or carve out her own path? As she wrestled with her thoughts, the question reverberated within her, what was it that she truly wanted? And just as she felt the clarity beginning to crystallize, Mr. C.C. plucked a document from the stack and slid it across the table, each paper presenting the weight of her father's will. This from your father is what he deemed most important, he stated with finality, unaware of the storm brewing inside her. Maggie's heart raced as she took hold of the paper. The stakes were suddenly far more significant than she had anticipated. Would this reveal surface-level desires or deeper truths? With trembling hands, she glanced down. Just as she began to absorb its content, the words jolted her from her introspection. Would she accept the terms? Or would she reject the notion that her father's voice still had the power to dictate her choices? Her breath caught in her throat. A decisive moment loomed ahead, teetering on the brink of revelation. The urge to confront not just her father's expectations but the entire framework of her identity surged within her. Maggie knew one thing: The moment had arrived to face the very foundation of her familial legacy and redefine what she was willing to accept. Maggie's eyes traced over the document, each word seemingly alive, vibrating with the weight of expectation. A sensation of vertigo enveloped her as the reality of her father's will unfolded. Lines of text blurred together, creating a cacophony in her mind. Her heart pounded against her ribcage, synchronizing with the drumming of doubt and determination within her. "Your father left you his shares in the family business," Mr. C.C. continued, his voice steady yet distant, failing to penetrate the fog of her thoughts. "He felt confident you could manage them." Manage them, the phrase ricocheted inside her, igniting a collision of pride and resentment. For years, she had drifted in her father's shadow, unsure of her own capabilities. The family business had been a closed door, one she hadn't dared to knock on. But now, faced with the prospect of inheriting it, fragments of her childhood ambitions sleepily stirred to life. Was this a lifeline or a leash? "Are there conditions?" Maggie managed to articulate, her voice trembling slightly. The idea of being tied to something she had long resented made her gut churn. What if accepting this inheritance meant shackling herself to a past she sought to escape? Mr. C.C. shifted in his seat, aligning his documents with a calculated precision that only fueled her unease. "Your father requested that you either take an active role in the business or relinquish your shares, surrendering them to be sold." The implications were heavy, the choice stark. She could either embrace her father's legacy completely or walk away. Each option bore risks: disappointment from her family or the foreboding weight of obligation. Maggie felt the walls of the austere office constrict, leaving little space for her burgeoning desire for independence. Could she truly step into a role defined by someone else? Against the backdrop of high stakes, she was left questioning her entire identity. The role of daughter, entrepreneur, and ultimately, the woman she wished to become was perched precariously, teetering on the precipice of decision. Maggie's breathing quickened as she recalled years spent distancing herself from familial expectations, using Mike's support as a buoy against the waves of anticipation every time the conversation circled back to the legacy she had sworn to reject. And now, the very memory of her father, once a source of fear, began to morph into a challenge. "Is this what he truly wanted for me?" she murmured, more to herself than to Mr. C.C. The attorney's silence only amplified her internal struggle. Facing that question was akin to navigating an intricate maze with no clear exit. As rebellious thoughts surged to the forefront, Maggie felt a magnetic pull toward another possibility, one that bypassed the dichotomy of acceptance or rejection. What if she could carve her own path within this legacy? Could she redefine the business in a way that aligned with her values, transforming it from a burden into a platform for empowerment? With this revelation, clarity surged through her veins, washing away some of the fear and doubt. The stakes were high, but perhaps this was her moment of reclamation. "Can we make it work on my terms?" she asked, her voice stronger now, meeting Mr. C.C.'s gaze with newfound ferocity. "I want to reshape what it means to carry my father's name." Determination flickered to life within her. The path she had once feared could be her avenue of growth, an opportunity to merge her identity with the legacy rather than be entrapped by it. She could almost feel the weight of chains breaking, replaced with the anticipation of forging something new. But as the conversation progressed, a nagging fear seeped back in, reminding her of the other piece of her life, a piece that continued to stir unease. How would Mike react to this shift? Would he embrace her ambition, or would it widen the chasm building between them? The roots of her father's legacy wrapped around her, but now, with every turn the discussion took, she sensed the possibility of freedom amidst the constraints. The reflection of her old self began to fade, replaced with the image of a woman ready to challenge expectations, yet the question lingered: was she truly prepared to step boldly into this new role, and what would the repercussions be for her relationship with Mike? As they delved deeper into the terms of her inheritance and potential avenues for collaboration, she felt the tempest within ready to spill over. The answers she sought were taking shape, but the price of her autonomy remained to be seen. With each passing moment, Maggie understood that she was treading on uncharted territory, and destiny was watching closely. Would she emerge as the architect of her own identity or remain a mere reflection of her father's teachings? The meeting felt like a weighty prelude, echoing the drama of her internal struggle. As the final details were laid out, the breath of possibility filled her lungs. The moment to reclaim her narrative was close at hand. The path ahead was murky, but Maggie felt a flicker of resolve to navigate through it. And just as she prepared to voice the changes she envisioned, a sudden silence fell over the room. An email notification pinged through the air, pulling everyone's attention. The screen illuminated with a message that could spiral her world into chaos. Urgent news regarding the business sale, immediate action required. Maggie's heart quickened. This wasn't just an evolution of her identity, it was a call to arms. Would she hold firm to her aspirations, or would the unexpected news upend everything she had fought to achieve? The air in the room shifted, thickening with the implications of that email. The words, urgent news, echoed in her mind like a faded drumbeat, drumming up fears that surged from her subconscious. A sale? Was this an effort to cut ties with the very legacy she was now contemplating embracing? The conflict roiled inside her, churning the resolve she had just begun to forge. "Sorry to interrupt," Mr. CC said, his voice slicing through the charged atmosphere as he glanced at the screen. "Let me check what this is about." She clenched her fists, heart racing. What if it was more than just a business sale? What if it involved aspects of her father's dealings that she wasn't aware of, secrets that he had buried beneath layers of corporate bureaucracy? Could she really take the helm of a ship in stormy waters? Mr. CC's fingers danced over the keyboard, narrowing his eyes at the information scrolling before him. Maggie felt her breath hitch, a chaotic symphony of hope and fear threading through her veins. The buyer is accelerating the process. They want the deal finalized within days, he murmured, his brow furrowed. Days. How could she absorb such monumental changes in her life and simultaneously scramble to save what had once been a precursor to her own ambitions? Uncertainty coiled around her like a serpent, that old tale of being trapped in a family legacy resurfacing with vigor. The weight of the potential loss chimed a dissonant note in her mind. What if she lost this opportunity forever? What are the specific terms of this sale? She questioned, her voice steadied by a simmering defiance. They're pushing for a swift conclusion, citing investor pressure. They're looking to overhaul the management team, possibly transitioning to an entirely new model, Mr. CC replied, his usually confident demeanor flickering with concern. If you decide to assert your rights, it might complicate matters. Maggie's vision narrowed, the world outside her father's legacy blurring as the walls of possibility enveloped her. This was the challenge she had been waiting for, not just managing the inheritance, but defining it against the backdrop of urgency. The thought lit a fire in her veins. What if she could rally around this impending sale? Reflections flitted through her mind, the ethos of the business, her father's foundational beliefs, and her own aspirations clamoring for a voice. The very essence of her father loomed large, but now, it spurred a burgeoning want to reveal her capability. Could she modernize this vision? Turn the family legacy into a vehicle for rejuvenation rather than mere survival? Could I utilize the impending sale as leverage? She pondered aloud, rallying her thoughts. Mr. CC paused, looking at her more intently than before. If I assert my position now, reject their conventional terms, can I steer this toward a new beginning? He nodded slowly, clearly recognizing the spark that had ignited within her. Yes, but you need to act decisively. You will have to present a compelling argument to potential investors and negotiate hard. It won't be easy. The challenge loomed but felt almost exhilarating. She envisioned a strategy forming, an audacious plan that could disrupt the status quo, a vision that wouldn't only honor her father's legacy but also align it with her values. It would stitch her identity into the fabric of the family business in a way that felt authentic. This could no longer just be about inheritance. This had the potential to become her own legacy, yet, shadows crept in as she considered Mike. His investment in her journey was significant. He had always championed her independence. Would he stand behind her newly found ambition as she delved deeper into this world of currency and corporate dynamics? Or would it alienate them further still? As thoughts clamored within her, Maggie realized she stood at a crossroad, not just in a business sense but in her relationship, too. She needed to make a choice that might define her future. Mr. CC, let us set up a plan, she declared, a newfound authority emerging in her tone. I'm done waiting in the shadows, waiting for opportunities to present themselves. I want to redefine what my father's legacy means before it's sold off to the highest bidder. She felt every heartbeat resonating with renewed purpose. Here was her path, fraught with peril but ripe with potential. In that moment, she understood that reclaiming her identity meant facing her fears head-on. Just then, another email pinged as if to push her further. She glanced at the screen, and her heart dropped. The subject line read, "Investors meeting confirmed, time to finalize deal." Could this be the defining moment that showcases her true capabilities, or a misstep that risks it all? Was she prepared to confront not only the impending business turmoil but the looming question of who she would become in its wake? Maggie Thompson stood in the conference room, a renewed clarity that shimmered like the polished oak table before her. The lights overhead flickered as her mind adjusted to the gravity of her decisions. The looming meeting with investors would not merely be a business engagement, it was the crucible in which she would untangle the threads of her family legacy and weave them into the fabric of her ambitions. With Mike by her side, she felt a blend of anxious anticipation and solid resolve. The conversation they had weeks ago resonated in her mind, a painful yet necessary confrontation that led her to this moment. No longer would she allow others to dictate her identity. Fighting against the gnawing fear, she reminded herself that this meeting could redefine not only her career but the essence of who she was as a daughter, a wife, and an independent woman. Her heart raced as they entered the room filled with stern faces and expectant gazes. The stakes were high. She had studied her father's legacy, the family business intricately tied to her upbringing, a legacy she once sought to escape. Yet now, underneath the weight of obligation, lay dormant ambitions waiting to burst free. The email from earlier resonated, a call to action. No more waiting in the shadows, she was ready to step forward. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, the confidence in her voice steadying the tremors of uncertainty. "I understand the urgency surrounding the business sale, but I believe we have an opportunity to reshape the future vision of our company." As she presented her ideas, the initial skepticism in the room began to give way to intrigue. She articulated a new strategy to leverage her father's existing connections while introducing innovative approaches to attract younger clientele, an authentic blend of legacy and modernity. One by one, nods of acknowledgement emerged around the table. She felt her father's spirit in the room, not as a ghost haunting her decisions, but as an ally guiding her toward this moment of transformation. Maggie looked squarely at the investors. "This isn't just about profit margins, it's about creating a brand that speaks to heritage while embracing change. I want to honor my father while infusing the company with my vision." Nervous energy transformed into an electric charge, each word amplifying her resolve. When the meeting concluded, Maggie stepped back, her heart swelling with accomplishment, not just from the agreement reached but with the realization of what she had just achieved. She had asserted herself, taking ownership of her family legacy rather than succumbing to it. That morning, she had embarked on an expedition, one woven with risk and fervor, knotting the fabric of her identity with purpose. Afterward, Maggie walked outside, the fresh air wrapping around her, a stark contrast to the sterile office space. She could breathe freely, the weight of expectations lifted. Her phone buzzed before she could collect her thoughts, a notification from Mike. "I was proud of you in there. You owned it." The acknowledgement felt like a balm for her spirit. In their earlier confrontation, Maggie had feared this journey might sever their bonds. Yet standing firm in who she was uncovered a shared strength, one united in growth and ambition. Endless possibilities opened in front of her, dimmed by uncertainty but sharpened by newfound clarity. In the weeks that followed, she dove deeper into her father's business, implementing her proposed changes and cultivating relationships that had once felt out of reach. Her confidence flourished with every small victory, dismantling remnants of self-doubt. She found joy in her work, wielding the legacy that had sought to constrain her into a platform for empowerment. As she stood in her office one afternoon, overseeing her team comprised of young, diverse talent, Maggie felt her heart swell with pride. She envisioned an organization built on innovation and inclusivity, creating opportunities woven into the community as well as her legacy. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped beyond the horizon, she received a call from the family lawyer. His voice carried warmth and gravitas. "Maggie, your father left a personal note addressed to you. He wanted you to have it once you claimed ownership of the business." Eager anticipation coursed through her as she opened the envelope, revealing a letter only she could decipher. It reflected his hopes alongside the weight of his failures, a tapestry of emotion that she felt compelled to honor. In that moment, Maggie understood. She had not merely inherited a business, she had uncovered the deeper layers of her lineage, stitching together the fabric of her identity fortified by her father's lessons, both learned and unlearned. Finally, standing exposed in her truth, she felt whole, ready to build not just a business but a legacy that could transcend the limitations previously imposed upon her. Her father's legacy would intertwine with her own, shaping the tapestry of their family that would now embrace growth and transformation rather than retreat into bitterness. Maggie had achieved what she had set out to do, all while constructing an indelible mark reflecting her evolution. The journey was hers, with every stride propelled by her newfound clarity. As the chapter of her father's era closed, a new story began, one that she would write for herself and future generations. And as she stared into the horizon, she knew she was finally ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.